Very good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming in for the webinar on cost of solar rooftop projects. My name is Puneet. We should be starting in another 2 minutes. We have about 21 people out of about 100 who have registered. I'm expecting that about 30 to 40 more people might join in. Please bear with me for another 2-3 minutes, after which we would start off. Meanwhile, there are some interesting facts that are there on the screen. Uh, Let me just get back to you in 2 more minutes. Okay, we have about 30 people who have joined us already, and I hope that there'll be a couple of more who join in the next 5-10 minutes. Meanwhile, we could start with the webinar. Some of you in the audience might already be aware that Government of India has announced a 40,000 megawatt target of installation of rooftop solar projects by the year 2022. Now, this loosely translates to about 5,000 plus megawatts being installed every year. This is in stark contrast to the fact that we have only about 500 megawatt installed right now. So we are looking at almost 100 times achievement of what we have right now in the next 7 years. This is going to entail an expense of about 5,000 crores, 30,000 crores on a yearly basis for the next 5 to 7 years. So it is pretty much safe to say that solar rooftop market is in for a big boom. Uh, During the course of this presentation, it will be my intention to explain to you how rooftop projects, number one, are profitable. Two, what is the breakup of various costs which are involved in a rooftop power plant? And lastly, how we can help at Ezysolare to get that costs further lower. To begin with, I'm your host for today. My name is Puneet Jaggi. I have had an experience of about 2 megawatts of construction of rooftop systems across the country. We have built systems on roofs of homes, on roofs of commercial buildings, universities, software parks, and so on. In case you would want to get in touch with me after the webinar, you can get in touch with me over my phone number, 9980258820, or you could also get in touch with me over my email ID at puneetjaggi@ezysolare.com. Regarding questions, I imagine at the end of the webinar, we would have a lot many questions. Typically, we do reserve about 15 to 20 minutes for questions at the end. What I would request, however, is that in the GoToWebinar control panel, which you would see on your screen, you would see that there's a questions panel also on the right of the screen. So you could type in your question and I'll take it up at the end of the webinar. Now, coming to the point of How to decide whether you want to set up a solar power plant or not? The first thing that you typically would want to do is that you would want to see that what is the kind of size that you can accommodate on your power plant, on your rooftop. As a ballpark, you require about 120 square feet per kilowatt of installation. For the sake of assumption, let me take that it's a 100 kilowatt system that you would want to install. Then you also would need to calculate what is the generation that you could expect from such a system. This generation is obviously going to change according to the sizing of your system. It's going to change according to the location of your system, the radiation that you receive, the kind of shadow that you have, and a multiple variety of other factors. By and large, in India, the rule of thumb is that it gives about 4 to 4.5 units per day per kilowatt of installation, which means that a 100 kilowatt system might be able to give you somewhere in the range of about 425 units in a day. Then the third part is, what is the cost of the system that you might have to bear? Although there are a variety of costs, and we will explore those costs in this webinar as well, but for a 100 kilowatt system, 65 lakh rupees is a fair estimate. Now, when you want to decide what is the kind of, when you want to decide that whether you would want to set up a solar rooftop system or not, essentially what you're trying to say is that what is the acceptable rate of return to the investment that you're doing, and whether your solar power system is able to provide that to you or not. Assuming that in the Indian circumstances, where the average cost of lending is about, say, 12% odd, typically an investor is happy with an 18% return. This 18% return on 65 lakhs translates to about 11.7 lakhs per year of saving that you should be able to make, which means that you should be able to make about 3,200 rupees of saving on a daily basis. So essentially, if your solar power system, a 100 kilowatt solar power system, is able to give you about 3,200 rupees of saving every day, you are making at least an 18% return. What that means is that 3,200 divided by 425, which was the number of units, rupees 7.54. In case your solar power system replaces energy of 7.54, then you are getting at least an 18% return. What is another way to say is that in case your tariff that you're buying electricity from the grid, or in case you use the diesel generator set, if the cost of that power is coming to be more than 7.5, it makes it a lot of sense to put up a 100 kilowatt system, 200 kilowatt system, whatever it is that you can accommodate, in order to be able to get a minimum of 18% return. Do not forget that there are other advantages along with that. You also end up getting tax advantages in case you're putting it in a profitable company, which can get this 7.5 figure down to even 6 or 5.5 rupees. So far, what we used to do is that, just explaining that how does Ezysolare help in the process. So far, what you used to do is that we used to provide layout services and solar energy assessment services to you, which means that you could have uploaded a rough sketch of your rooftop and we would have told you what is the kind of capacity your roof can accommodate. You could have also uploaded some basic details of the capacity and the kind of technology you want to use, and we would have given you the expected generation from the rooftop. But now, we have also introduced SolarCart. SolarCart essentially is an online marketplace for solar products, wherein you can buy module, inverter, junction boxes, cables, structures, essentially everything that forms a part of a solar rooftop system. So essentially the cost that you're talking about, rupees 65 lakhs or whatever it is going to be for your size of system, all of that equipment can be bought on SolarCart now. So now you can estimate size, estimate generation, and also order all of your equipments online with Ezysolare. Now coming to the topic of the webinar, that is the cost of setting up a solar rooftop system. What really contributes to the cost of a solar rooftop system? The first thing that you typically do is that you do civil work, the foundation work. The second thing after that is that you build structures on top of that foundation. Then the modules come in. When sun rays fall on these modules, it produces DC current. Then you need to have an inverter which converts this DC current into AC current. The power from the modules to the inverters is fed through cables. Further, the power from the inverter into our own building loads is fed through cables again. Lastly, there are lots of peripherals that you use in terms of lugs, earthing, lightning, and many other smaller parts of the entire BOQ or bill of quantities that you would require in a solar system. Let me cover one by one all the components of the systems. Coming to the modules first and foremost. In India, we have got the typically for rooftop solar power systems, till recently, we used to get a significant subsidy. Now, the process of getting subsidy has become quite difficult, but that said, we have loads of Indian panel suppliers as well. Internationally, we have got pretty reputed makes which are typically used for utility scale power plants. Now, since the subsidy could have been claimed only for the Indian make modules and not for international, so till recently, mostly we have seen rooftop solar power plants installing Indian panels. Vikram, Vari, Tata, Alpex, Navitas, these are some of the brands, but we have got more than 150 brands of modules available in India. Now, what are the factors that impact the cost? The good thing about modules is that, as the name suggests, they are extremely modular in nature. What that means is that one single panel can give you 0.25 kilowatts of power. You put these four panels together, it will give you 1 kilowatt of power. You put 400 panels together, you get 100 kilowatt of power. And you put 4,000 panels, you get 1 megawatt of power. What I mean to say is that the size does not change the basic unit which is used to set up the plant. Irrespective of how large a power plant or how small a power plant that you set up, the basic building block still remains the module, which is going to be the same across the different sizes. Now, what the factors that impact the cost is number one, the brand. This is particularly true from Indian modules. Some of you might already have an experience with buying modules in the Indian market. The Tata module is probably the most expensive Indian module, in part because it enjoys the Tata brand and trust. Also because Tata also manufactures the cells which are used to make these modules in India itself. Vikram and Vari are also amongst the most reputed and well-branded modules, one of the largest suppliers in India. Alpex is amongst the old ones as well. Navitas has recently built a state-of-art line in Surat. So that's a new brand which has got added to the Indian module manufacturing list. In the international brands, we have got Canadian, Trina, Rene, Jinko, Yingli. The recent problems of Yingli kept apart, all of these brands are extremely bankable in the international industry. So the factors that impact the cost, as I was saying, the first thing is brand. Mostly you'll find Tata to be the most expensive. In some geographies, what we have heard is that 1 kilowatt worth of panels of Tata can cost as much as 50 to 55,000 rupees. 1 kilowatt of panels from Vikram or Vari might cost in the range of about 37,000 rupees, whereas Alpex or Navitas might be at 35 or 36,000 rupees. The second thing is the freight. Modules are not extremely light. The photo that you can see of a module is typically a typical 60 cell module which weighs about 20 kgs. Now imagine that you want to set up a 100 kilowatt system. There's going to be almost 400 modules of this type, each weighing about 20 kgs. Because of this, there's a significant freight cost. If you were to transport as little as 10 kilowatt of modules, you would see that from, say, Chennai to Pune, your cost is going to be in excess of 15 to 18,000 rupees. So that is a cost that you need to take into consideration. Now, considering that modules, irrespective of the size, are fundamentally the same unit, so the only lever that the sellers use in order to have a larger sale is that they have a lower costing for a larger bulk order and a higher costing for a smaller order, which makes sense considering the manpower that they are going to invest. So a 100 kilowatt probably could be bought at 37,000 rupees, whereas a 5 kilowatt might have to be bought at 42,000 rupees. But by and large, as a ballpark, you could imagine that 37 rupees per watt peak, which is essentially about 37,000 rupees per kilowatt, is the cost of a module in India. The next is the inverter. Again, in inverter, we have got multiple brands present, but most of these brands do not have local manufacturing in India. We have got SMA, Schneider, ABB, Fronius, Delta, Refusol, and many others. SMA is arguably the most branded solar inverter. It also has the maximum market share. Schneider, ABB, and Fronius are more or less in the same range in terms of cost, but Delta is the most competitive with its manufacturing based out of Taiwan. The factors that impact the cost of an inverter are somewhat different from the factors that impact the cost of a module. The most important factor which you would see is the size of a typical system. What I mean to say, if you have a 25 kilowatt inverter versus a 5 kilowatt inverter, the costs can be as much as 3 times larger. Whereas a 25 kilowatt inverter might be available to you at, say, 12 rupees, a 5 kilowatt or a 2 kilowatt inverter might be available to you as high as 30 to 40 rupees a watt peak. So there's a significant difference. As a result of this, the commercial of a 5 kilowatt project are not as favorable as commercials for a 100 kilowatt project where you can have 425 kilowatt inverters. The second thing is the brand. As I was explaining, the SMA inverter would cost you probably about 10 to 20% higher than a Delta inverter, which is probably the most competitive in the Indian market. Going forward, we have got customs duty, which is a big cost. There are two ways that you can use the inverters, or you could order the inverters. You could order them from a distributor which is based out of India, or you could order them directly from the manufacturer. In case you order them directly from a manufacturer, you have got some time lag in between, wherein you can go to the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, get a customs duty exemption certificate for projects only larger than 100 kilowatt, and because of that, you will be able to save as much as 20% on the cost of an inverter. The inverter imports attract a customs duty and a special additional duty of cumulative about 26%. In case the customs duty is waived, there's only a special additional duty of about 5.5 to 6%, which means that you save about 20% on the cost. That's it. As a ballpark, the cost would be about 12 rupees a watt peak. Moving on, the next important thing is cables. Now, cables are of two types. There are DC cables and there are AC cables. The cables which are used from modules to inverters would be DC cables, and the cables which are used from inverters finally to your load or to the junction boxes, they'll be AC cables. There are various brands of cables, Indian and international, which are there in the market. The Indian brands are extremely well reputed. They are not specific to solar alone. We have got Havells, Polycab, Seachem, Apar, Advanced, RR Cable, Dravin, Bhansali, and so many more which are there. The LAP is arguably and Leone. They are the two more famous international brands for solar cables in India. LAP is a German brand, Leone an Italian brand. Uh, because they have to be imported, their costs tend to be slightly higher in comparison to the other Indian brands. But the factors that impact the cost of cables is somewhat different again. The most important factor which would determine the cost of cable in a solar power system is going to be the length of the cable. This in turn completely depends upon the design of your solar system. Say, if you have designed a 100 kilowatt system pretty well, then the length of your cable can be as low as 1 to 1.5 kilometers. But the same system can lead to a length in excess of 3 kilometers in case you have multiple roofs and an extremely distributed system. Right? So the length per kilowatt is different for different kind of sites, which in turn determine that what is going to be the cost per watt peak for cables. Another very important factor is the cross section. Now, what I mean by cross section is that a DC cable, for example, can be a 4 square mm cable or a 6 square mm cable, or in some cases even a 10 square mm cable. The choice of the size of the cable is in turn dependent upon how long is the stretch of the single cable. Because the longer the stretch, the higher the losses. If you want to reduce the losses, then you need to go for a higher cross section from 4 to 6 and from 6 to 10. We have seen that in the Indian industry, people have also used 2.5 square mm cables. We do not recommend them unless and until it's an extremely small distance. But by and large, 4 and 6 square mm cables are the most common. On the AC side, in the copper cable, you'll have 10 square mm or larger cables, or otherwise, you'll also have aluminium cables. So that is about the cross section. Coming to the third point, which is discounts. Cable is an extremely notorious industry when it comes to discounts. The discounts can vary as much as from 5% for a small 5 kilowatt system to as much as 70% on the rate card for a large megawatt scale order, right? So, considering we have got such a large array of discounts, it makes every sense for you to negotiate as much as possible on the cables to get as much discount. By and large, what we have seen is that for a 100 kilowatt system, a cable which is labeled as say 50 or 60 rupees is going to be available to you at around 35 to 45 rupees per meter, which is considering the length that we are going to use, say 2 kilometers for a 100 kilowatt system, and this cable is going to cost you roughly about 40 rupees odd. The cost tentatively comes to about rupees 3 per watt peak, which is also another way to say rupees 3,000 for a 1 kilowatt system. Moving on, we have got civil and structures. Now, there are two kinds of structures which we typically put up in a solar power plant. There are hot dip structures and cold roll structures. The key difference between the two is that in a hot dipped structure, you have an iron which you have channels of iron which are dipped into a zinc molten bath. Considering in a cold roll system, it's something different. You already have pre-galvanized sheets and rolls of iron, then which are molded into structures which are used for solar power plants. The cold rolled steel is much stronger and that's why it requires less tonnage, whereas the hot dip galvanized steel or hot dip galvanized iron is typically you need to buy more quantity of it because they have lower strength. Now, there are multiple factors that impact these costs. We have got the roof types, we have got design, and the material that affects these costs. By material, what I mean is that at some places, at most of the places in India, we typically use a normal iron to build these systems, to build these structures. But in some cases, particularly when the installation is on sheds and where we require a much lighter profile, we also used aluminum structures. So the material makes a difference. Aluminum is far, far more expensive in comparison to iron. The design is also extremely critical. Over here, it is worthwhile to note that about 3 years back, the typical tonnage of iron which used to be used for say a 1 megawatt power plant used to be in the range of about 80 to 100 tons. And nowadays, per megawatt, the typical tonnage is 40 to 45 tons. This is largely on account of better optimization of design. So more optimized your design is, more specific it is to your location, your particular tilt, the height of the structure, the wind zone of your location, and so on, the better you'll be able to derive in terms of cost. Lastly, the structure costing also depends on the roof type. There can be typically three kinds of roofs. There can be an RCC roof, which is the typical concrete roof found at most places. There can be a roof integrated structure, which means that there is a shed or an industrial shed made of galvanum sheets, in some cases asbestos sheets. right? And you would want to have the solar panels installed on top of these galvalume sheets. And the third kind of structure is that although it's a concrete roof available, but you do not want to use that roof directly for panels, so you build a superstructure on top of that in order to fit the solar panels upon. Needless to say, the three would have completely different kind of costing. Superstructures would be extremely expensive. Roof integrated, although would seem to be much cheaper because there are less tonnage involved. But in order to keep the profile as light as possible on top of a shed, you would typically see aluminium used as a material and not iron, as a result of which the RCC roof structures and the roof integrated structures end up coming to the same cost. Now, there are multiple parts of the structure. There is something called a column, which is the base of the structure, and on top you have got rafters and purlins. These rafters and purlins are typically cold rolled steel, and the column is typically hot dip galvanized. The approximate costs of this structure is about 5 rupees a watt peak. Moving on, there are electrical peripherals, which is essentially junction boxes, earthing, lightning arresters, conduits. These are extremely specific to various sites, extremely specific to design, but by and large, all of these costs combined can come to about 2 rupees a watt peak, which is again 2000 rupees per kilowatt. Lastly, there are services. There is supervision service, there is design service, and there is installation service. Designing would come first. Typically, this would range in the cost would range about 1,000 rupees per kilowatt, which would mean about a lakh rupees for a 100 kilowatt system. This is on the lower side. Typically, it would range anywhere from 1 to 2 rupees per watt peak. Then the installation cost, which is essentially the labor which is used to install these solar panels and erect these structures. And lastly, there is a supervision cost that is about the site engineers who supervise the work of the labor. All in all, this cost comes to about 4 rupees a watt peak. So this is the general breakup of the entire cost of a system. For your easy analysis, I have put out for a 5 kilowatt system, a 20 kilowatt system, and a 100 kilowatt system. What is the kind of costing that you can expect? Some of you might notice that I had left out the batteries cost, or I had left out the battery connected systems during this discussion. The reason for that is that batteries are extremely sensitive to the design and the size, and as a result, their costs can greatly vary from one place to the other. Also, the inverter which is used with the batteries, typically called the PCU, the costing is much different from what you would find for a regular system which is without batteries. But as a ballpark, as you would see, a 50 kilowatt system, a 5 kilowatt system installed on a RCC rooftop can give you 87 rupees per watt peak costing, which is per kilowatt 87,000 rupees, whereas a 100 kilowatt system can give you a costing of about 65 odd rupees, or about 65,000 per kilowatt. So that is the variation. If you go for a roof integrated system, as you would see, the mounting structure cost keeps on going down. The reason for that is that the profiles are much lesser. If you look at a ground mounted system, the prices are almost the same as RCC roof mounted. If you look at the services component, you would see that a smaller system, because of the higher overheads, would have higher costs, whereas a larger system would have lower services cost. Margin, we have kept more or less, on larger system, and a system integrator is willing to is willing to have a lower margin, whereas on a smaller system, you would expect a higher margin. So these are the costs that typically you can get from a turnkey contractor. Now, here's where is the Ezysolare advantage. Each of these costs, when procured from Ezysolare platform, from SolarCart, we could expect as much a saving as 20% on the overall system. A very interesting part over here is that the design cost has been kept as zero. In case the entire procurement that you do is on Ezysolare platform, then the Ezysolare team gets designing of the system done for you free of cost. Not only that, there are a variety of discounts that you can get. All that you need to do is you need to pick up a phone and give a call to our team, and we'll be able to negotiate special discounts for you with individual suppliers of panels, inverters, junction boxes, and cables. Just to give you a basic idea of what the platform is about, let me just quickly open one for you. This is what the typical platform, solar card platform looks like. We can have modules, inverters, cables, structures, peripherals, tools, and solar gadgets that you could order from this platform. One thing I would also like to point out is that although the delivery online is limited to a couple of states to begin with, but what you could very well expect is that on an offline basis, when you give us a call, we would be able to negotiate better prices than what is given on the platform. And also, we would be able to deliver in all the states wherever you would want a solar panel to be delivered. Just to give an example of PV PowerTech module, you could click on on any product that you're looking. You could check the availability. Say I would want to order a panel to my father who sits in Bathinda. It is available at Bathinda. And then I could buy, order, pay online, and the module will be delivered to you. We already have logistics tie-up, so all that you need to do is order and make a payment. Within a few days of you making a payment, you should have the modules delivered. And an interesting example over here is going to be that of a recent delivery that we made. Although this portal is going to go live in the next week, we are hoping to launch it on Monday. But that said, you could start keep booking your orders right away. In the run-up to the launch of SolarCart, in the last 10 days, we have already booked about 50 lakh rupees of orders, which has been mostly delivered. The delivery has been as short as 48 hours from the time of receiving the payment in some cases. In order to do that, we encourage you to reach out to my colleague Mohit or to myself and start placing your orders. Now, the time for some questions. If there are any questions that anybody has, please feel free. Let me just open the questions tab to see if there are some that are there. Mr. Ketan Jasani asks that what are the government prevailing benefits for rooftop projects? Interesting question. Uh, as far as the government benefits are concerned, there are three kind of benefits which are or were available at least. The first benefit that to a rooftop power system is going to be that of accelerated depreciation, which is a tax benefit, which means that if you set up a solar system in a company or a partnership which is profitable, you could reduce the tax burden of that system by as much as 80% of your system cost. That is first advantage. The second advantage that you get by installation of a rooftop power system, and this is being rolled out from state to state, is that of net metering, which means that say you install it on top of a school, but your school is switched is not consuming power on Saturdays and Sundays. So the excess power that you produce on Saturdays and Sundays is fed to the grid, and later on that excess power is adjusted in the bill that you have to pay. The third benefit that was available till recently is subsidy, although in theory it is still available, but the process of claiming subsidy is quite difficult. Also, if you look at it, the government would ideally want to move away from subsidy based regimes as much as possible, because at 40% of commercial and industrial locations, it is profitable to go solar without any subsidies altogether. Moving on, whether CDM benefits can be viable for rooftop projects. Typically, you would see that only about 1,400 carbon credits are there get generated in a year for a 1 megawatt project. And at the current cost at which carbon credits are selling, which is less than 80 euro cents, I believe that you won't even be able to recover the consultant's fee. On a rooftop project of 100 kilowatt, probably doesn't make too much sense to go for CDM benefits. Kindly inform the structural costs for various types of rooftop. Sure. So as I had mentioned, the structural costs for different kind of rooftops are primarily dependent upon the tonnage that is required. To make a comparison between an RCC roof and a superstructure, a superstructure would require probably about 100 to 120 or 10 to 12 tons per 100 kilowatt system, whereas an RCC roof would require probably half that much. So you could imagine that the superstructure cost is going to be almost 2 times that of a simple RCC structure cost. When we compare RCC structure to a roof integrated, wherein there's an installation on top of sheds, although a comparison I have provided in the few slides, but nevertheless, for your information, the cost would be slightly lower for sheds in comparison to an RCC rooftop. What is the ideal cost per watt for a fixed structure, grid connected, net metering rooftop system, and for off-grid rooftop system? Off-grid rooftop system, probably I would stay away from commenting, but for a fixed structure, probably you could expect anywhere in the range of about 65 rupees a watt peak to 75 rupees a watt peak, depending on the brand, the technology, and the design that is there. Uh, for a battery supported system, probably the cost is going to be in the range of about 125 to as high as 200 rupees a watt peak, depending on how large a battery bank are you operating. There are some questions which are there for utility scale market. I'm skipping that. I'm largely sticking to rooftop systems. The next question is how to calculate capacity of rooftop considering sufficient shadow-free space. Now, ideally, the way you should do is that you should call an expert to the site, make him take all the readings or all the dimensions on the site, and based on those dimensions, you should be able to get a shadow analysis from the expert. I would argue that probably about 50 odd firms in India are able to do this job very well. The other alternate that you have, if you look at the screen, is that you could log on to ezysolare.com. On ezysolare.com, you have this option of solar design. When you log into solar design, amongst the various services that we have is a layout service as well. During this layout service, you could use this layout service essentially to order a layout which is specific to your particular location. Just to give an example, if I select my particular location, I could also select this location in a map. Seems to be taking some time to load. I'll go next. I could fill in some basic parameters, upload a basic drawing of the rooftop, and that should be enough to get a detailed layout for the rooftop that we plan to make. To show you a basic sample, I'm sorry. Probably you could log into on the website and see a sample for yourself. I'll move on to the next question. Has polycrystalline module the best across most geographies in India? I'm not sure if I understand this question properly, but what I'll take it as is that our polycrystalline modules are the most suited across geographies in India. Polycrystalline is one of the most cost-effective module and also one of the most rugged modules. Also, in comparison to thin film, crystalline modules are more efficient, which means it requires less space. So, for rooftop projects, considering their sturdy nature, their low cost, and the fact that they require lower space, polycrystalline modules are the most sought after modules which are used across India. Uh, Another important point, Mr. Ketan Jasani has requested to inform the audience that the custom and excise duty benefits can be availed over and above any other subsidy. And people could get in touch with him. I'm sure his details are available. Maybe later on I can share it. His number is 9909220018. That's some bit of marketing done, but I guess that should help Ketan sir as much it helps the other members of the audience. Are there any good softwares available for structure design? The most common software that we also use internally at Ezysolare is STAD. STAD is the default software for structure engineering, which is used in solar as well as in most of the other industries, including construction, bridges, metros, and so on. Any good training programs for structure design? I'm afraid we run our own internal training program. I don't have a lot of options. However, till the time that you would want an assistance, Ezysolare does provide detailed engineering services as well. So you could request a call with our executives, and we could help you out with any part of structural engineering or electrical engineering or any kind of system engineering that you would want for a solar rooftop system. Uh, Do you require lightning arresters in SCADA and firefighting for a rooftop system? SCADA is slightly different, but see, lightning arresters and firefighting equipment is more a matter of health, safety, and environment, right? So you won't want to compromise in those aspects. Imagine a situation where there is a fire in the system and you lose the entire system just because you did not have a fire cylinder handy. Or imagine a situation where a lightning struck and in order to save about 20,000 rupees, you didn't put a lightning arrestor. Over here, it is important to note that lightning arrestor is of two types. There is an ESC type and a conventional type. The kind of lightning arrestors which is suitable to you, you should discuss it with an expert, or you could discuss it with our team free of cost, and we could probably suggest what is the best possible lightning arrestor for you. Needless to say, the most competitive prices you could get from us as well. As far as SCADA is concerned, this is not a mandatory requirement, but SCADA typically comes along with most of the inverter suppliers nowadays. So you can log on to their websites and you could access the information that you would want online as well, as long as you have got a SIM card inserted in the basic SCADA that comes along with the inverters. Uh, Mr. Nishant Verma has asked that, as you said, Delta inverters are most cost competitive in the Indian market, but when you go designing, Delta inverters are extremely oversized. For example, 25 kilowatt inverter, normally DC input is only 20 kilowatt, then how to choose the inverter? This is an extremely specific question. I would say that the design is going to be completely dependent on your specific condition. Say, for example, if you have got a 50 kilowatt system, right, then it makes every sense to put up 25 kilowatt of two Delta inverters in comparison, only from a cost perspective, in comparison to, say, putting a 25 kilowatt into an SMA system. But if you are having a 60 kilowatt system and then you can take a larger oversizing on an SMA, probably it's more cost effective to go for 2 into 25 of SMA versus 20 into 3 of Delta. Right? It's extremely specific. That said, again, I encourage you to interact with the design team free of cost to be able to resolve such doubts for you. Mr. Sunil Mysore has asked, is SolarCart fully functional? Yes, SolarCart is fully functional, but we are accepting orders on phones for the time being. On Monday onwards, you'll be able to give orders online as well. Also, what is going to be important is that online you are restricted to 8 states to begin with. Online you're restricted to only about 25 brands to begin with. However, offline we can provide to you delivery in any state across the country. We could provide to you any brand across the country. Just that we are in the process of getting those brands online, and we are in the process of appointing distributors to be able to make products available in every state. That said, we can start accepting orders on SoloCart immediately offline. My colleague Mohit is the one whom you should get in touch with for placing there for orders. His number is on the screen. His number is also there on the Ezysolare website, 9925345121. Moving on, are any EPC or installation services also offered by you? I'll request you to stay tuned. There is also a product called Solar Connect that we would be launching in a couple of months. Solar Connect is a platform that we are using to connect professionals with rooftop owners, right? So we are making a database for solar professionals, including civil contractors, electrical contractors, consultants, Bresco companies, so on and so forth. Because you could get in touch with them to get installation services. You could also post a lead online, and one of these will get in touch with you. So in due course, yes, we would provide. Right now, the system is that in case you want any EPC or installation service, you could get in touch with us. We already have a database, although it is not online. We could try to get you in touch with the most relevant person, and you could take things ahead. Do you also install the system? As I said, we do not install the system ourselves, but we have a network of system integrators that we are building under Solar Connect who can install the system turnkey or in part for you. What is the cost for Trina modules? Okay, this is a slightly specific question. Fortunately, we have a limited stock available for Trina modules, as cost effective as 32 rupees a watt peak. But this would probably get over in this week's time. So if you would want to place this order, probably this is only applicable for this week. We are also having a very interesting exclusive launch sale for Navitas modules in the next week. We hosted another sale for Vari modules in the last week. So we are having most of the brands, and we should be able to provide a better price than what you are able to achieve directly. Just give us a call and we'll let you know. Do you do O&M for the same? What are the O&M costs typically? As I said, we do not do O&M, but as you can see on the screen, there are contractors who do O&M whom we'll be empaneling pretty soon, so you could get in touch with them. We are also building some services around O&M to make your life a little easier, easy understanding of warranty conditions, easy repair management, and so on. As far as the costs of O&M is concerned, although on a megawatt scale, the costs are typically in the range of 6 lakh rupees per megawatt. I'm sorry, but for a rooftop system, probably you don't really require a full-time executive manning or full-time engineer manning your system. So what you need to essentially do is keep your systems clean and have an AMC kind of attire wherein every 3 months the installer can send his person and check your system for health. What are the current subsidies from government for rooftop projects? Theoretically, 30% of the system cost. But the problem with these subsidies is that it's an extremely tough process to get them because you need to apply with a channel partner. That channel partner prepares a file, submits to MNRE. MNRE project approval committee approves this file and there's only 1 in 3 projects which does get approved. After that, the system integrator builds the plant. Once the system integrator has built the plant and the plant is operational for 1 month, you submit that data and a completion certificate to MNRE back again. The MNRE inspector visits the system installation, and after a couple of months, which can be anywhere from 6 to 12 months, you get the subsidy, right? So it's a long, arduous process. What I would recommend is that do not hold your system ransom to the subsidy. Go ahead, build the system, and let the subsidy process continue in parallel. I guess we'll just take 1 or 2 questions, although I think I've got about 15 more left. I'll take the rest of the questions offline. Otherwise, I see that the number has gone down from 48 participants to 40 participants, and pretty soon I'll see the number going down to 0. Uh, what are the states in which net metering has been implemented? Does Maharashtra and MP have net metering? I'm afraid I do not have those details immediately available, but probably the next webinar that we do can be done on the net metering, and I could provide a lot more details. I know a couple of states in which net metering is applicable: Punjab, Haryana, Tamil Nadu, I think Karnataka as well. I am not too sure about Maharashtra. In all probability, Maharashtra is not in net metering right now. Gujarat has recently released a net metering policy, so that's an interesting place for you to take. Do you take care of in-transit insurance for the products? Yes, we do take care of in-transit insurance. In fact, every product is 100% insured up till it's unloading at your premises, right? So any product which is ordered at SolarCart is 100% insured. Can you put solar panels on a GI roof? Uh, In principle, yes, you can do that, but it depends upon the structural load studies that you do. The roof and the structure of trusses beneath that roof should be able to support the load. In past, we have done a 300 kilowatt system, a 30 kilowatt system, and in future we are going to do as much as a megawatt scale system on a roof. Although it was not a GI roof, it was a galvalume roof. But yes, it is possible to do that without any leakages or any threat to material lying below the roof. For 65 lakhs, how much margin we can put in Chennai? I'm not sure what the question means. What I would assume it means is that in 65 lakh rupees, how much is the margin which is earned by the EPC contractor? It is probably in the range of about 3 to 4 lakh rupees. I'm not sure specific to Chennai what are the rates going on over there. Our rates that we quote on solar cart and easy solar are not based on a location specifically. They are based across the country. Do you take care of shadow analysis in the CA report that you publish? Absolutely, absolutely. We make sure that we are only going for shadow-free areas, and the impact of near shadow equipments are properly taken into account while producing the CA report. And it's free to order your first few CA reports. So why don't you order some, and then you would be able to experience the detail, depth, and simplicity of the reports yourself as well. Ground system cost is shown as 64.84. I feel it is too less, as ground projects will have much more work than RCC rooftop. See, the only work that is there is in the foundations part, and in rooftop also you need to do significant amount of work to cast those foundations, right? So probably it will be a 1 rupee or 2 rupee watt peak higher, but not significantly much. This is also evident from the fact that on the megawatt scale, probably we can install a system for you at 5.5 crores, right? So probably RCC or a ground would be only 1 or 2 rupees different. Are REC benefits applicable for a 50 or 100 kilowatt client? It is possible to take REC benefits for a 50 to 100 kilowatt. However, it is largely state specific. The process of getting REC benefits is that you need to be able to first go to the state nodal agency, accredit your project over there, and then go to the central nodal agency wherein your project gets registered. Right now, most of the states have regulations that only grid connected projects will be taken up, and off-grid projects or rooftop projects might not be taken up. On the contrary, in Maharashtra, we have seen a 100 kilowatt system on the roof also get REC benefits. So it's specific to a particular state. What about the quality? The customer is afraid of Chinese modules due to image. See, Chinese modules because of image is a very old question that we have been answering. Uh, in principle, we do not have a bias against Chinese modules or in favor of Chinese modules. If you look at the raw material which is used in most of the Indian modules, not all of them, but most of the Indian modules, these cells are still imported from China, right? So we don't have a bias against them. The only thing is that in case there's a problem, it is much more difficult to claim a warranty from a Chinese supplier in comparison to an Indian supplier, right? Also, the fact that Chinese suppliers are much larger in scale, so a 20, 50, 100 kilowatt system might be of much smaller consequence to them in comparison to an Indian supplier. Lastly, not all Chinese modules maintain warehouses or have distributors in India, so it also becomes cheaper to go for an Indian supplier. Will Easy Solar mounting structure be able to supply STAT report as well? We have got two separate services. One is Solar Cart, in which you can order the structures, and one is Solar Design, where you can order the design of those structures. So, would Easy Solar be able to provide STAT reports? Definitely, we would be able to do that. But this is not a part of Solar Cart. Again, as I had said in my webinar earlier, in case you end up procuring all of your equipment through EG Solar platform, in that case, all the detail engineering that comes along with that is free of cost. What are the softwares that we use for shadow analysis? There are essentially 2 or 3 softwares. We take help of Google Maps, Google SketchUp, and lastly, we take help of the inbuilt tools in PV Syst to be able to do PV system analysis. Can a system integrator use Ezysolare? By all means. In fact, the aim of Ezysolare in the short run is to become the back office of system integrators, which means that we want you to use us for your procurement, for your engineering, and eventually we want you to use us to help you and get in touch with local electricians, local contractors, so that it becomes extremely smooth. You could concentrate upon converting the customer and building the plant, whereas all the heavy lifting, all the back office work, you could outsource to Ezysolare and we'll get it done for you. Any special discounts for system integrators? There is a way that we offer discounts in case of solar design. We make branded reports for your particular system. I'll just give you an example. If you look on the screen, we have made a sample for Vikram. I'm afraid I seem to having some connectivity issues, but there are branded reports essentially that we are able to make for system integrators, which are at a discounted cost, but there's a bulk order associated with that. As far as any discounts for system integrators in solar cart is concerned, to be honest, we are to begin with, we are not charging any margins on top. So that's why this is as it is the bare minimum that we offer. But we guarantee that you will be able to get a better cost at Ezysolare in comparison to any other platform or direct procurement that you would want to do. We are hoping to do about 30 megawatts of procurement in this year, which would mean that we have significant scales on which we are building, and as a result, we will be able to pass on significant scales to you. We, as it is, have a pipeline of more than 500 to 700 kilowatt procurement on a monthly basis available assured to us, right? So as it is, you should be able to get that benefit. Which professional softwares would you recommend for a detailed system design? There's a combination of PVSys and lots of and STAD and AutoCAD that we use, along with lots of codes and standards which are not found in any software, but we have got our Excel sheets to prepare that, right? So there's an entire combination that we use at Ezysolare to be able to give you the best possible design. But in order, if you have to purchase softwares and do your own engineering, I believe PVSys is an absolute essential, STAD is an absolute essential, and AutoCAD is an absolute essential. Are solar cart prices inclusive of all freight costs and other taxes? The prices that you see online are all inclusive, including shipping. In fact, it's free shipping. So they are all inclusive. The taxation is actually when you get into the final part of ordering the equipment in the cart Easy Solar, you'll be able to see the VAT or the CST also applied over there. So yes, it's all inclusive. For the offline orders that you make, I assume if you're going to give me a 30 kilowatt module delivery to be made from Vikram in Kolkata to say some place in Gurgaon, I would have to get back to you with the exact freight cost because 30 kilowatt Kolkata to Gurgaon, these are extremely specific circumstances and the freights can vary a lot. So we would want to ideally vet the route and the size before we can quote a freight cost. You could expect costs to be quoted to you within a couple of hours of your query, so you won't have to wait a lot in order to place your orders. Can you provide the estimated generation per the coordinates? Understand that the shadow and structure will have additional impact. The estimated generation can also be taken from SEER, so yes, we can do that. How SolarCard promoted to bring in more awareness to the availability of product? Webinar is one of the means. So that's one way we do it. You would see that we would be launching a significant email campaign in the next 20 days to make people aware about this. We would be also having a stall at Renewable Energy Expo, so we invite everybody to visit us at Renewable Energy Expo in the end of September at Noida. So that's another way. So these are various platforms that we are using, and we are depending a lot on the word of mouth of good people such as the audience, right? So hopefully from that we should be able to do. The inverter costs that you mentioned are for the grid-tied inverters or hybrid inverters. The inverter costs that I mentioned are for the grid-tied inverters. The hybrid inverters can be significantly more expensive. And that wraps up all the questions that we have for today. Thank you for being a wonderful audience. Be tuned in for a webinar. We have one almost every alternate week. Thanks a lot. Have a lovely Saturday. Have a nice weekend.